The scratching started on the third night after 12. Katya witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see, and from the moment she heard those deliberate rhythmic sounds on her bedroom door, scratch, pause, scratch, she knew with absolute certainty that whatever was making that noise wasn't an animal. Animals scratched frantically, instinctively. This was measured, intentional, almost like a code. Like someone or something was trying to tell her they knew what she'd seen, that her secret wasn't as secret as she hoped, and that staying silent was the only thing keeping her alive. The scratching continued for exactly 5 minutes, then stopped, and in the silence that followed, Katya lay frozen in her bed, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. If you're about to scroll away, stop, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you is the story of how a 12-year-old girl in a remote Russian village discovered a truth so dangerous that speaking it out loud could get her entire family killed, and how the mysterious scratching at her door every night was either a warning from someone trying to protect her or a threat from someone ensuring her silence. And smash that like button if you've ever known something you were unsupposed to know, and felt the weight of that secret crushing you. This is the story of Katya and the snow wolf who scratched her door, and the truth no one dared to speak. 3 nights earlier, Katya had been walking home from her friend Mattia's house later than she should have been, taking the shortcut through the woods that her mother had forbidden her to use. But Katya was 12 and felt invincible the way 12-year-olds do, and the shortcut saved 20 minutes. The October sun set early in Siberia, and darkness came fast. She was halfway through the forest when she heard men's voices, speaking in tones that made her instincts scream danger. Katya had hidden behind a fallen tree, making herself small, barely breathing. From her hiding spot, she'd seen 5 men in the clearing. 3 she recognized: Maya Volkov, Police Chief Sokolov, and Director Petrov, who ran the local mining company. The other 2 were strangers, dressed in expensive coats that looked out of place in the rural setting, carrying briefcases that suggested business rather than pleasure. They were discussing something in low, urgent tones, and though Katya couldn't hear every word, she heard enough. Numbers, large numbers. 3 million rubles, diverted from the education fund. No one will notice if we're careful. The children's hospital construction can be delayed another year. Katya's breath had caught. They were stealing. These men: the mayor who smiled at town meetings, the police chief who came to her school to talk about safety, the director who employed half the village. They were stealing money meant for schools and hospitals, and they were doing it with the casual confidence of people who'd done it before and planned to do it again. Katya had stayed hidden until they left, then run home faster than she'd ever run, her mind racing with the weight of what she'd heard. She'd told no one, not her mother, a single parent who worked double shifts at the village clinic just to make ends meet, not her teacher, who was sweet but naive and would never believe such accusations against respected men, not Masha, her best friend, who couldn't keep a secret to save her life. Katya had kept the truth locked inside, telling herself it was safer that way, that she was just a kid and no one would believe her anyway. But the weight of knowing had pressed on her like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe, hard to sleep, hard to pretend everything was normal. And then the scratching had started. The first night, she'd thought it was their cat trying to get in, but when she'd opened the door, nothing was there. The second night, the same thing: 5 minutes of deliberate scratching, then silence, then nothing visible when she checked. The third night, she didn't open the door. She just listened, counted the scratches, and realized they formed a pattern. 3 scratches, pause. 2 scratches, pause. 1 scratch, pause. Then the sequence repeated. It was too deliberate to be random. Someone or something was sending a message she didn't understand. The next morning at breakfast, Katya noticed her mother watching her with concern. "You look exhausted, Sonishko," her mother said, using the affectionate diminutive that meant little son. "Are you sleeping okay?" Katya forced a smile. "Just bad dreams." "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was terrified and confused and didn't know who to trust. If the mayor and police chief were corrupt, who else was involved? Who could she tell without putting herself and her mother in danger? The secret felt like poison, spreading through her with each passing day. At school, she noticed Mayor Volkov's daughter Irina watching her with an odd expression during assembly. Irina was 16, beautiful and popular, completely out of Katya's social sphere. They'd never spoken beyond polite hellos, but now Irina's eyes followed her with intensity that made Katya's skin crawl. Did she know? Had someone seen Katya in the woods? Was the scratching at her door a warning that they knew she knew, that staying silent was the only thing keeping her safe? That night, Katya prepared. She set up her phone to record video, pointed at her door. When the scratching started exactly at midnight, like clockwork, she captured it. 5 minutes of deliberate, measured sounds. When it stopped, she immediately checked the recording. The audio was clear, the scratching undeniable. But something else was there too, something she hadn't heard in the moment. Between the scratches, if she listened carefully with headphones, there were soft sounds, breathing. Someone or something was standing right outside her door, scratching, waiting, breathing. Katya didn't sleep that night. She sat with her back against the wall, holding the heaviest book she could find as a weapon, watching her door and wondering what would happen if she opened it. Would she find a person, an animal, something worse? The question swirled until dawn came and the familiar sounds of her mother preparing for work broke the spell of terror. Morning light made the night's fear seem silly, overdramatic, but Katya knew better than to dismiss what she'd experienced. The scratching was real, the breathing was real, and the secret she carried was deadly real. She decided to do something she'd been avoiding. After school, she went to the village library, an old building with computers donated by the mining company and internet so slow it felt like time travel. She searched for information about the education fund Mayor Volkov had mentioned. According to official records, the fund was fully allocated. The children's hospital was on schedule, everything was transparent and proper. But Katya knew those records were lies. She'd heard the truth spoken in a dark forest by men who thought no one was listening. The librarian, Mrs. Orlova, noticed Katya's searches and came over with concern. Researching government finances, that's very advanced for someone your age. Katya tried to sound casual. A school project about civic responsibility. Mrs. Orlova smiled, but her eyes were worried. Be careful with your research, dear. Sometimes the most interesting information is also the most dangerous to know, especially in a small village where everyone knows everyone else's business. Was that a warning or just friendly advice? Katya couldn't tell anymore. Everyone seemed suspicious now that she carried this secret. She thanked Mrs. Orlova and left quickly, feeling eyes on her back as she walked home. The village that had always felt safe now felt like a trap. Every smile hiding potential threat, every kindness possibly concealing malice. And that night, when midnight arrived and the scratching started again, Katya made a decision. She would open the door. She would confront whatever was making those sounds. Because living in fear of the unknown was worse than facing it directly. She approached the door as the scratching continued, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. 3 scratches, pause, 2 scratches, pause, 1 scratch, pause, 1 scratch, pause. She counted to 3, gathered her courage, and yanked the door open quickly. Nothing. The hallway was empty, lit by the nightlight her mother kept on. No person, no animal, no explanation for the scratching that had been happening seconds before. But something was different. On the floor, directly in front of her door, was a piece of paper folded once. Katya picked it up with shaking hands, unfolded it, and found a message written in careful block letters. They know you know. Stay silent or run, there is no trap. Third choice, a friend who wants you to live. Below the message was a simple drawing, a wolf's paw print. Katya stared at the note, her mind racing. Someone knew what she'd witnessed. Someone knew she was in danger. And someone was warning her while simultaneously frightening her half to death with midnight scratching. Who was the snow wolf? And why were they trying to help her? The questions multiplied faster than answers could form. And Katya realized with cold clarity that her life had just become exponentially more complicated and dangerous. Katya didn't tell her mother about the note. How could she explain that mysterious messages were being left at her door by someone who scratched like a wolf at midnight? Instead, she hid the paper in her journal, between pages about homework and friends and other normal 12-year-old concerns that now seemed impossibly distant. The next day at school, she couldn't concentrate. Her mind kept returning to the message. They know you know. How did they know? Had someone seen her in the woods? Was there a security camera she'd missed? Or was this some kind of trap, a psychological game to make her reveal herself? During lunch, Irina Volkov approached her directly for the first time ever. Katya, right? Can we talk privately? The mayor's daughter's voice was friendly, but her eyes were calculating, assessing. Katya's instinct was to refuse to run, but running would look suspicious. Sure, she said, trying to sound casual despite her racing heart. They walked to a quiet corner of the schoolyard, away from other students. Irina looked around carefully before speaking. I need to tell you something important. My father. I don't want to hear about your father, Katya interrupted quickly, fear making her words sharp. Irina's expression flickered with something that might have been pain or might have been understanding. That's smart. Don't trust easy. But Katya, I'm not my father. I know what he is, what he does. And I know you saw something you weren't supposed to see 3 nights ago. The question is whether you're smart enough to keep your mouth shut or foolish enough to think you can fight men with power. Katya felt her world tilt. Irina knew. The mayor's own daughter knew about the corruption and about Katya's accidental witnessing of it. I don't know what you're talking about, Katya said, but the denial sounded weak, even to her own ears. Irina smiled sadly. That's the right answer. Keep giving that answer. To everyone who asks, you saw nothing, you know nothing. You're just a kid who takes shortcuts through the woods and gets scared of shadows. Can you do that? Who's scratching at my door? Katya asked, the question bursting out before she could stop it. Irina's expression became carefully neutral. I don't know what you mean, but if someone were trying to warn you, to keep you safe while also frightening you enough to stay silent, would that be such a bad thing? Sometimes fear is the only thing that keeps us alive. Sometimes the monsters we're afraid of are actually trying to protect us from worse monsters we haven't met yet. Before Katya could respond, Irina walked away, leaving her standing alone with more questions than before. The mayor's daughter was involved somehow, knew about the scratching, maybe was even behind it. But why help her? What did Irina gain from warning the 12-year-old girl who'd accidentally stumbled onto her father's crimes? Unless Anders' thought chilled Katya, unless Irina was trying to control the situation. To keep Katya quiet while appearing to help her, making Katya trust her before betraying that trust. That night, Katya prepared differently. She set up not just her phone camera but also powder on the floor outside her door flower from the kitchen. Spread thin enough to show footprints or paw prints but not obvious enough to be immediately noticed. When midnight came and the scratching started, Katya watched her phone screen instead of approaching the door. She saw the shadows move under the door, saw the scratching motion. And then when it stopped, she waited a full 10 minutes before checking. The flower showed prints, not paw prints like she'd expected, but human footprints. Small ones, women's size probably. Wearing soft-soled shoes that had barely disturbed the powder but left enough impression to be identifiable. The snow wolf wasn't a wolf at all. It was a person. Someone who came every night to deliver warnings through scratching. Someone who knew exactly what Katya had witnessed and was trying to keep her alive through fear. But who Katya took photos of the footprints, measured them carefully, and spent the next day at school comparing them mentally to every woman she saw. Too big for most students, too small for most adults. But they matched perfectly with one person's feet, Mrs. Orlova, the librarian who'd warned her about dangerous research. The kind woman who'd seemed concerned about Katya's searches into government finances. The one person in the village who had access to information, who could connect dots that others missed. Who could move through the village at night without suspicion because librarians were trusted and ignored. After school, Katya went to the library. Mrs. Orlova was at her desk, stamping books with the methodical care of someone who'd done this task thousands of times. When she saw Katya, something flickered in her expression: recognition, maybe, or resignation. Back to research, government finances, she asked lightly. Katya approached the desk and spoke quietly. Why are you scratching at my door at night? Why the warnings? If you want to help me, why not just tell me directly? Mrs. Orlova's hand stilled on the book she was stamping. For a long moment, she didn't respond, and Katya wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then the librarian smiled sadly. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Come with me to the back office. We need to talk privately. Katya followed, her heart hammering, unsure if she was walking toward help or danger. The back office was small, filled with old books and filing cabinets. Mrs. Orlova locked the door and turned to face Katya with an expression that was equal parts resigned and determined. My daughter was your age when she died, Mrs. Orlova said without preamble. 15 years ago, she witnessed something similar to what you witnessed: corruption, theft, men in power stealing from the village. She was brave and stupid and tried to expose them. They made it look like an accident, a fall from the library balcony that everyone believed was tragic bad luck. I've spent 15 years gathering evidence, building a case, waiting for the right moment to destroy the men who killed my child. And then you stumbled into their meeting and saw what I've been documenting for years. Katya felt tears burning her eyes. So the scratching, Mrs. Orlova nodded, was meant to frighten you into silence without revealing who I am or what I know. I needed you scared enough to keep quiet, but not so scared that you do something desperate like run away or tell the wrong person. The wolf imagery was deliberate. Wolves protect their pack, even when the protection looks like threat. I'm protecting you the only way I can, while also using you as insurance. Insurance? Katya asked. Mrs. Orlova pulled out a thick folder from a locked cabinet. Everything is in here. 15 years of evidence, transaction records, photographs, recorded conversations. Enough to send Mayor Volkov and his accomplices to prison for decades. But I needed one more piece of witness to their current operations. You're that witness, Katya. You saw them actively planning theft. Your testimony, combined with my documentation, is enough to destroy them completely. But I'm just a kid, Katya protested. Who would believe me? Mrs. Orlova smiled grimly. You're exactly the right age. Children are considered incorruptible witnesses. Your testimony carries more weight than an adult's because you have no motive to lie, no political agenda, no financial stake. The courts trust children, especially when their testimony matches documented evidence. That's why I've been warning you to stay silent. I need you alive until we're ready to move. When will we be ready? Katya asked. Mrs. Orlova's expression became serious. Soon, very soon. I have contacts in Moscow, journalists who specialize in exposing corruption, investigators who can't be bought. They are coming in 2 weeks. When they arrive, we go public with everything. We expose the entire network in one coordinated revelation. But until then, you must stay silent. You must continue being frightened by the scratching. Must keep avoiding Irina Volkov's attempts to manipulate you. Must act like a scared child who saw nothing important. Can you do that? Katya thought about her mother working double shifts to pay for necessities while the mayor stole millions. Thought about the children's hospital that would never be built because corrupt men wanted vacation homes. Thought about Mrs. Orlova's daughter, dead at 12 for trying to do the right thing. I can do it, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I can be scared and silent for 2 more weeks, but Mrs. Orlevelt, if they figure out you have evidence, what if they come for you? The librarian's smile was cold. Then I've prepared for that too. I have insurance upon insurance. Dead man's switches that release everything if I don't check in daily. They can kill me, but they can't stop the truth anymore. It's too late for that. The wolf is at their door now, and they don't even know it yet. You and I, Katya, are the wolves they should have feared all along. We're the ones who'll tear their comfortable lies apart and expose them to the light. Katya left the library feeling different than when she'd entered. No longer a frightened child carrying a dangerous secret alone, but part of something larger, something that mattered. The scratching would continue. They both agreed it was necessary to maintain the appearance that Katya was being warned into silence. But now Katya knew the truth behind the fear, knew she had an ally, knew that speaking the truth was possible if you were smart and careful and willing to wait for the right moment. That night when the scratching came, Katya listened with new understanding. Each scratch was a reminder. Stay strong, stay silent, stay alive. 2 more weeks. Just 2 more weeks until the wolves revealed themselves. Until the truth no one dared to speak would be spoken so loudly that even power could unsilence it. Katya smiled in the darkness, no longer afraid of the sounds at her door. The snow wolf was protecting her. And soon, very soon, they'd both howl together and watch the corrupt men run. The plan began falling apart on day 8 when Police Chief Sokolov came to Katya's school to give a routine talk about stranger danger and community safety. Except his eyes kept finding Katya in the crowd, studying her with intensity that had nothing to do with concern for student welfare. After the assembly, he approached her directly. Katya Ivanova, I understand you sometimes take the forest shortcut home from your friend's house. That's dangerous behavior. Lots of things can happen in those woods. People can see things they weren't meant to see, can get ideas that aren't accurate. Have you seen anything unusual in the forest recently? Katya's rehearsed answer came automatically. No sir, just trees and animals. Sometimes I see deer. Sokolov smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good, because sometimes young people with active imaginations think they witness things that didn't actually happen. They might overhear adult conversations and misunderstand innocent discussion as something sinister. If you ever think you've seen or heard something concerning, you should tell me immediately. I'm here to protect you after all. That's my job. The threat was barely disguised. He knew, maybe not that she'd specifically witnessed their meeting, but he suspected she'd seen something, was testing to see how she'd react. Katya kept her expression neutral, channeling every acting skill she'd learned from school plays. Thank you, Chief Sokolov. I'll definitely tell you if I see anything weird. He studied her face for a moment longer, then patted her shoulder with a hand that felt like a warning. Good girl. Remember, I'm watching out for you always. That night, there was no scratching at midnight. Instead, at 11 p.m., there was urgent knocking at the front door. Katya's mother answered to find Mrs. Orlova disheveled and frightened, in a way Katya had never seen her. I need to speak with Katya, it's urgent. Katya's mother looked confused, but allowed the librarian inside. Mrs. Orlova's eyes were wild with barely controlled panic. They know, I don't know how, but they know I have evidence. Someone broke into the library tonight while I was closing up. They didn't take anything, but they searched my office thoroughly. They're looking for the documents. Do they have them? Katya asked, fear making her voice thin. Mrs. Orlova shook her head. The real evidence isn't in the library. It's in a safety deposit box in Irkutsk, 200 kilometers away. But they're getting close, getting desperate. We can't wait 2 more weeks. We need to move now. Tomorrow I've contacted my Moscow sources. They're sending someone tomorrow night to collect you, me, and all the evidence. We go to the regional capital, we go public, and we don't come back until the arrests are made. Katya's mother, who'd been listening with growing alarm, finally spoke. Excuse me, but what is going on? What evidence? What danger? Someone needs to explain this to me right now. Mrs. Orlova and Katya exchanged glances, and Katya made the decision. She told her mother everything: the meeting in the woods, the stealing, the scratching at her door, Mrs. Orlova's 15-year investigation, the plan to expose everyone. Her mother listened with an expression that cycled through disbelief, horror, and finally, fierce protectiveness. We leave tonight, her mother said flatly. Not tomorrow. Tonight. If these men are desperate enough to search the library, they're desperate enough to do worse. We pack essentials, we take what cash I have hidden, and we drive to Irkutsk immediately. Mrs. Orlova, can you be ready in an hour? The librarian nodded. I can be ready in 20 minutes. I've had a go bag prepared for years, just in case. Katya felt her world tilting again, but this time toward action rather than paralysis. They were really doing this, running, speaking, fighting back, but they weren't fast enough. As Katya and her mother packed, they heard vehicles outside, multiple vehicles surrounding their small house. Katya looked out the window and saw Police Chief Sokolov and 4 officers positioning themselves around the perimeter. Her mother saw them too and went pale. Back door. Now move. They grabbed their partially packed bags and ran through the house toward the back exit, but it was blocked too. Officers were everywhere, systematically cutting off every escape route. They were trapped. Sokolov's voice called out, amplified through a megaphone. Mrs. Ivanova, Katya, please come out peacefully. We just want to ask some questions about suspicious activity reported in your neighborhood. There's no need for anyone to be frightened. But Katya heard the lie in his voice, heard the threat beneath the reassuring words. If they went out there, they might never come back. Her mother seemed to reach the same conclusion, pulling Katya close and whispering urgently, "Stay absolutely silent. Let me handle this." Katya's mother opened the door, stepping out alone while pushing Katya behind her. "Chief Sokolov, what's this about? Why are you surrounding my house like I'm some kind of criminal?" Sokolov approached with fake concern painting his features. "Where's your daughter, Mrs. I? We received reports of a child in distress. We're just concerned for her well-being." Katya's mother blocked the doorway with her body. "She's sleeping and she's fine. Whatever reports you received are mistaken. Nevertheless, we need to verify that. Bring her out, please." It wasn't a request despite being phrased like one. Katya's mother stood firm. "Do you have a warrant? Because last I checked, you need legal documentation to enter a citizen's home or question a minor without parental consent." Sokolov's expression hardened. "Don't make this difficult. Mrs. Ivanova, we're trying to protect your daughter. There are dangerous individuals in this village. Librarians who fill children's heads with lies and paranoid fantasies. We need to make sure Katya hasn't been influenced by harmful ideas." It was then that Katya understood the full scope of how dangerous these men were. They weren't just corrupt, they were willing to use their authority to silence anyone who threatened them, even children, even by force if necessary. Her mother must have understood too, because she did something Katya would remember forever. She turned to Katya, still hidden behind the door, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Run now, the back window, run." Katya didn't hesitate. She ran through the house, climbed out her bedroom window, and fled into the night, while behind her she heard her mother screaming at the officers, creating chaos and distraction. Katya ran toward the only place she could think of, the library, where Mrs. Orlova would be, where maybe together they could figure out what to do. Her 12-year-old legs pumped, her lungs burned, and tears streamed down her face as she heard vehicles start up behind her, heard voices shouting orders, heard the hunt begin. She made it to the library and pounded on the door. Mrs. Orlova opened it immediately, pulled her inside, and locked it behind them. "They came for you." Katya nodded, gasping for breath. "They have my mother. They're looking for me. What do we do?" Mrs. Orlova's expression was grim but determined. "We fight back. Come with me." She led Katya to the library's basement, to a room Katya had never seen before. Inside were computers, recording equipment, and walls covered with evidence, photographs, documents, recordings. "This is my real office, my war room. For 15 years I've been building this case. Now we use it." Mrs. Orlova sat at the computer and started uploading files, sending them to multiple contacts, to news organizations, to government oversight agencies, to anyone and everyone who might act on the information. "I'm releasing everything, every piece of evidence, every recording, every document. It's going out now, tonight, before they can stop us. The truth is about to become very loud, Katya, and when it does, we'll have one chance to survive getting to Irkutsk before they can silence us permanently." Outside they heard vehicles arriving, heard Sokolov's voice demanding entry. Mrs. Orlova kept typing, kept uploading, racing against time and threat. "There's a tunnel," she said calmly, "built during Soviet times as a bomb shelter. Exits 3 blocks away in the old factory basement. We go through it, we steal a car if we have to, and we drive like hell toward Irkutsk. Are you ready for this, Katya? Once we go, there's no coming back until this is over." Katya thought about her mother in police custody, about the truth that needed to be spoken, about Mrs. Orlova's daughter who died for trying to do the right thing. "I'm ready. Let's finish what your daughter started. Let's make sure she didn't die for nothing." Mrs. Orlova smiled through tears. "Then let's go wake the wolves. Let us show these corrupt men what happens when you hurt children and think you'll get away with it forever." The snow wolf is done scratching at doors. It's time to tear them down. They descended into the tunnel, leaving behind the library and safety and childhood, heading toward danger and truth and the moment when silence would finally break. Behind them they heard the library door being breached, heard shouting and chaos, but they were already gone. 2 wolves disappearing into darkness, carrying secrets that would soon be screamed from every news outlet in Russia. The hunt was on. But this time the wolves weren't the ones being hunted. They were the ones doing the hunting, and their prey had nowhere left to hide. The tunnel was exactly as claustrophobic and terrifying as Katya imagined. Lit only by Mrs. Orlova's flashlight, the ceiling so low they had to crouch while moving. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, and Katya tried not to think about what might be living down here. Tried to focus only on moving forward, on surviving, on the end goal of reaching Irkutsk in safety. Behind them, muffled by earth and concrete, they heard sounds of the library being searched, heard Sokolov's voice echoing through old air vents. Find them, they can't have gone far. Mrs. Orlova moved with surprising speed and confidence despite her age, navigating turns and obstacles like she'd walked this route many times before. "I've kept this tunnel maintained," she explained quietly. "Changed the access codes, ensured the exits stayed functional. I knew someday I might need an escape route. Librarians learn to plan ahead. They reached the factory basement exit after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Mrs. Orlova carefully opened the concealed door, checked that the area was clear, and led Katya into a space filled with old machinery and the smell of rust and abandonment. There, Mrs. Orlova pointed to a dirt-covered car in the corner and an old ladder that had seen better decades but looked functional. I keep it maintained and fueled, just in case. Get in. While Mrs. Orlova hotwired the ignition, a skill that made Katya stare in surprise, she explained. My husband was a mechanic before he died. Taught me useful things, like how to make a vehicle start without keys, how to disable GPS trackers, how to survive when systems fail. I've spent 15 years preparing for exactly this night. Everything I've done, every skill I learned, was for this moment. The engine coughed to life, and they were moving, driving carefully through back alleys and side streets, avoiding main roads where police might be watching. Katya kept checking her phone, hoping for a message from her mother, praying she was okay. Nothing, just missed calls from unknown numbers that she knew better than to answer. Mrs. Orlova drove with focused intensity, taking routes that suggested intimate knowledge of every back road and hidden path out of the village. Your mother is strong, Mrs. Orlova said, reading Katya's worried expression. She'll be fine. They can't hurt her without risking questions they can't answer. Public arrest of a single mother nurse. That raises eyebrows. They'll question her, try to intimidate her, but ultimately they'll have to let her go, especially once the evidence goes public. Speaking of which, she pulled out her phone, checked something, and smiled with grim satisfaction. First news outlet just picked up the story. Moscow Times is running with headline, Corruption in Siberian Village, Millions Stolen from Education Funds. It's happening, Katya. The truth is speaking. They drove through the night, headlights cutting through darkness, every passing vehicle making Katya's heart jump with fear that it might be police pursuit. But no one followed them, no one stopped them. They were invisible wolves slipping through the dark, carrying their payload of truth toward the light. As dawn approached, they reached Yakutsk, a real city with real traffic and the anonymity that comes with population density. Mrs. Orlova drove directly to the regional prosecutor's office, where journalists and investigators were already gathering based on the leaked information. The next hours were a blur of official statements, recorded testimony, documents being verified and catalogued. Katya told her story multiple times: the meeting in the woods, the scratching at her door, the threats and intimidation. Mrs. Orlova presented 15 years of evidence with the organized precision of someone who'd been waiting for this moment half her life. The prosecutors took it all seriously, made calls to Moscow, activated investigation protocols that would soon descend on Katya's village like a storm. News spread faster than anyone expected. By noon, the story was national. Major networks running with corruption, exposed, social media exploding with outrage, politicians scrambling to distance themselves from the accused men. Mayor Volkov's face appeared on screens across Russia, his denials sounding hollow against the mountain of evidence. Police Chief Sokolov was arrested attempting to flee to Kazakhstan. Director Petrov turned himself in, hoping cooperation would reduce his sentence. The entire corrupt network was collapsing in real time, undone by a 12-year-old girl who'd seen what she should unhave, and a librarian who'd spent 15 years preparing to speak truth to power. Katya's mother was released that afternoon, driven to Irkutsk by federal investigators who apologized for the local police misconduct. When she saw Katya in the prosecutor's waiting room, she ran to her and held her so tight that Katya could barely breathe. "I'm so proud of you," her mother whispered through tears. "So proud and so terrified and so relieved. You did what was right, even though it was dangerous. You're braver than I ever was." Katya cried too, releasing days of tension and fear and stress. They were safe. They'd survived. The truth was out. But there were consequences they hadn't fully anticipated. Death threats arrived within hours, anonymous messages promising revenge, suggesting that exposing the corruption had made powerful enemies beyond just the village men. Federal protection was arranged, but it came with restrictions. They couldn't go home, couldn't resume normal life, would be living under assumed names in an undisclosed location until trials were complete and threats neutralized. Katya's 12-year-old life had been transformed permanently by one accidental witnessing of corruption. Was it worth it? Katya asked Mrs. Orlova during a quiet moment that evening. The librarian thought seriously before answering. "My daughter died because she tried to speak truth and no one believed her. No one protected her. You survived because 15 years of preparation created the infrastructure to protect you when you spoke. Was it worth losing normal life for a while? Yes, because justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about showing children that speaking truth is possible, that the powerful can be held accountable, that one voice can matter if it's amplified by the right people at the right time. You've changed everything, Katya. Not just for our village, but for every child who knows something they're afraid to say." Over the following weeks, the scope of the corruption expanded beyond anything Katya or Mrs. Orlova had imagined. The investigation revealed that Mayor Volkov's network extended to 3 other villages. That the theft wasn't millions but tens of millions, that children asked hospitals and schools across an entire region had been delayed or cancelled to fund luxury for corrupt officials. The story became a national scandal, leading to reforms in oversight and transparency. And at the center of it all was Katya, the 12-year-old girl who accidentally witnessed a meeting and had the courage to speak what she'd seen. Awards came, recognition from child advocacy organizations, medals from government officials trying to show they cared about corruption reform, invitations to speak at schools about civic courage. Katya attended some events but avoided others, uncomfortable with being treated as a hero when she'd mostly just been scared and trying to survive. "I'm not special," she told a reporter who wanted to do a profile. "I just saw something and told people Mrs. Orlova is the hero. She spent 15 years building the case. I was just the final piece." But Mrs. Orlova disagreed. "You were the catalyst, Katya. Evidence without a witness is just paper. Your testimony, your courage, your willingness to speak despite fear, that's what made everything else matter. Don't diminish what you did. You saved our village from men who would have stolen from it for another 15 years. You got justice for my daughter and for all the children who would have suffered from cancelled hospital construction. That's not nothing. That's everything." 6 months after that terrible night when they'd fled through tunnels and driven through darkness, Katya and her mother were finally cleared to return home. The trials were complete. The sentences handed down. Mayor Volkov received 15 years, Police Chief Sokolov 12 years, Director Petrov 10 years. Others in their network received similar punishment. The stolen money was being recovered and redirected to its intended purposes. The children's hospital was finally under construction, properly funded and on schedule. The village that had been bleeding from corruption was healing, but returning wasn't easy. The house that had been surrounded by police was still their house, but it felt different now, violated by the search that had happened, haunted by memories of that terrifying night. Katya's room with its door where the scratching had occurred felt both familiar and alien. Her mother noticed Katya's discomfort. "We can move if you want. Start fresh somewhere else. You don't have to stay in a place with bad memories." Katya thought about this seriously, standing in her room looking at the door that had both frightened and protected her. "No," she said finally. "We stay. Because running away means they still have power over us. Living here, living normally, that's how we win completely. Besides," she smiled slightly, "the scratching wasn't really scary once I knew what it meant. It was Mrs. Orlova trying to protect me. This room is where I learned that fear can be a tool, that warnings can look like threats, that sometimes the wolves at your door are actually guarding you." School was complicated. Some classmates treated Katya like a celebrity, others avoided her like she was contagious with trouble. Irina Volkov, now living with distant relatives after her father's imprisonment, approached Katya on the first day back. "I wanted to apologize," she said quietly, "for my father, for not doing more to stop him, for everything. I knew he was corrupt, but I was too afraid to act." "You were braver than I was." Katya studied the older girl who tried to warn her in her own way. "You did try to help. In your way? That counts for something." Irina smiled sadly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just making excuses for cowardice. Either way, thank you. For doing what I couldn't. For speaking up. My father doesn't speak to me anymore. Blames me for not warning him you knew too much. But I'd rather have his hate than live with knowing I could have helped expose him and chose not to." The two girls stood together for a moment, united by complicated family histories and difficult choices. Then Irina walked away, and Katya felt something like forgiveness form, not for the corruption, but for the fear that had kept others silent while she'd found the courage to speak. Mrs. Orlova continued as the village librarian, but with a difference. She'd become something of a local hero. The woman who'd spent 15 years building a case while appearing to be just a quiet librarian. She established a new program teaching children about civic responsibility, about documentation and evidence, about how ordinary people could hold power accountable. Katya helped with the program, sharing her story in ways designed to encourage others to speak up about injustice they witnessed. The scratching at your door, Mrs. Orlova explained during one class, was meant to frighten Katya into silence while actually keeping her safe. "I needed her quiet until we had protection and infrastructure ready." But the lesson isn't about fear tactics, it's about timing. Sometimes truth needs to wait for the right moment, needs preparation and support before it can be safely spoken. That's not cowardice, that's strategy. The brave thing isn't just speaking truth, it's knowing when to speak so you're heard rather than silenced. Katya's mother returned to her nursing work, but with renewed purpose. She became active in village governance, ensuring the recovered funds were actually used as intended, that the new oversight systems stayed functional, that corruption wouldn't creep back once attention faded. "You changed me too," she told Katya one evening. "I used to think the world was what it was, that ordinary people couldn't fight systems. You showed me that's wrong. One person can make a difference if they're willing to try." On the anniversary of the night, Katya had witnessed the meeting in the woods. The village held a ceremony. They dedicated the nearly completed children's hospital, naming it after Mrs. Orlova's daughter, the first child who'd tried to speak truth and paid the ultimate price. A plaque was installed, in memory of Marina Orlova, who saw corruption and tried to speak, and in honor of Katya Ivanova, who saw corruption and succeeded in speaking. May their courage inspire all children to speak truth to power. Katya read the plaque and felt tears form. Marina should be here. She should have survived. She deserved to see the hospital built. Mrs. Orlova stood beside her, her hand on Katya's shoulder. She does see it. Through you, you finished what she started. You spoke the truth she tried to speak. In a way, she's here in every child this hospital will treat, in every student who learns civic courage, in every corrupt official who thinks twice before stealing because they remember that even children can bring down empires. That's her legacy and yours together. That night, Katya lay in bed in her room where the scratching had occurred, and thought about everything that had happened. She'd lost her normal childhood, had been thrust into danger and responsibility no 12-year-old should carry. But she'd also gained something, the knowledge that speaking truth mattered. That courage was possible even when terrified, that one voice could echo and amplify until it became a roar that even power couldn't ignore. She'd been the girl who the snow wolf scratched warnings to, and she'd become a wolf herself, learning to use fear as a tool, learning to wait for the right moment, learning to speak when speaking would be heard. She pulled out her journal where she'd hidden that first note. They know you know. Stay silent or run. There is no note's third choice, a friend who wants you to live. Below the original message, Katya wrote her own edition in careful letters. There was a third choice. Stay and speak. Face the fear and tell the truth anyway. That's what wolves do when they're done scratching doors. They tear them down. Years later, when Katya was in university studying journalism and justice reform, she'd return to speak at Mrs. Orlova's civic courage classes. She'd tell new generations of children about the night she witnessed corruption, about the scratching that frightened and protected her, about the librarian who'd spent 15 years preparing to speak truth. And she'd always end with the same message. The wolves at your door are always threats. Sometimes they're warnings from people trying to protect you, and sometimes, when you're ready, you realize you're a wolf too. And wolves don't stay silent when they see injustice. They howl, and the howl echoes until it changes everything. Mrs. Orlova would watch these presentations with pride, seeing her daughter's memory honored, seeing Katya flourish into the kind of person who used trauma as fuel for justice rather than letting it break her. You became what I hoped you'd become, she told Katya after one particularly moving speech. Not just a survivor, but an advocate. Not just someone who spoke truth once, but someone who teaches others how to speak. That's the real victory, not just the corruption we exposed, but the culture we created where speaking up is valued instead of punished. I learned from the best, Katya said, hugging the woman who'd been her unlikely savior. The snow wolf who scratched my door taught me that protection sometimes looks like fear, that timing matters as much as courage, that justice is worth waiting for if it means doing it right. I carry those lessons everywhere. They made me who I am. The village continued healing, growing stronger on the foundation of truth rather than the rot of corruption. The children's hospital opened to celebrations and tears, treating its first patients with care funded by recovered stolen money. Schools received proper funding, books, supplies, infrastructure improved. And through it all, the story was remembered, not just as a scandal but as proof that ordinary people, even children, could challenge power and win if they were brave and smart and willing to speak truth when the moment was right. Katya would sometimes wake in the night, phantom sounds of scratching making her heart race before she remembered she was safe, that the danger had passed, that the wolves at her door had been allies, not enemies. And she'd smile in the darkness, grateful for the fear that had kept her alert, for the warnings that had kept her alive, for the librarian who protected her while preparing the ground for truth to flourish. The scratching at her door had been terrifying, but it had also been the beginning of everything that mattered: the courage, the justice, the knowledge that silence protects the guilty while speaking up protects the innocent. If you've made it to the end of this story, hit that subscribe button to hear more tales of ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. And drop a like if you believe that truth is worth speaking even when speaking is dangerous, that children deserve to be heard, and that sometimes the scariest sounds at your door are actually the ones trying to save your life. Thank you for watching the story of Katya and the Snow Wolf, a reminder that corruption fears nothing more than a child brave enough to speak and adults willing to believe them. The wolves are always at someone's door. The question is whether they're scratching warnings or we're becoming wolves ourselves, ready to tear down the doors that hide injustice behind locked wood and threaten silence. Be the wolf, speak the truth, change the world.